Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we're getting back into Venom War, to where now we see something that we've been waiting on for a long time, and that's Peter Parker as the King in Black, because as we know, it was supposed to be him this whole time, instead of Eddie Brock. And so to tie this to what we've covered so far, it's going to be like 4 issues that we're putting together here, because some of these tie-ins are just covering the exact same thing. So we're covering King in Black Spider-Man for this one, and in another video we'll go back to the main issues of Venom War. So with that said, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so going into this, we pick up where we left off, with Peter and the Venom symbiote getting intercepted by a number of obstacles on their way to Grand Central Arena, where Eddie Brock is currently holding the symbiote smackdown of the century. But along the way, we saw Peter and the Venom symbiote run into the Hobgoblin and get help from MJ, who is now the superhero known as Jackpot. But to make things worse, this all escalated when they were confronted by the Arachnio. And as soon as this happened, the Venom symbiote told Peter that there's no way they're gonna have a chance against this thing unless the two of them are bonded together, because prior to this, Peter only agreed to wear the symbiote and get it to the arena. But now that the Arachnio has been thrown into the mix, symbiosis is the only way they're gonna get through it. So Peter agreed, but he told the symbiote, man, don't make me regret this. Which next leads to Venom telling Peter the origin of the Arachnio, because all we knew prior to this was that this thing was very strong, it was a legend of Clintar, and even Knull was afraid of it. But it's here in this flashback where the symbiote tells Peter, in our language, the Arachnio is called all hunger, for it can never be filled. Within the Clintar, all are one. It is core to what every young spawn is taught. But all hunger was born of 2 symbiotes, who committed a heresy and bonded with each other while still attempting to remain themselves. By rejecting oneness, they severed their connection to the hive, becoming their own mad collective, a hive within a hive, with every consciousness not adding to the whole, but interrupting discordant. The Arachniote is our warning. The Arachniote is love. The Arachniote is death. So it's here where Peter tells the symbiote, you're afraid. Aw, Benny, you should have said that up front. If you want to bond to get over your jitters, take it from someone who's afraid literally all the time. Fear is what heroes are made of, and we are heroes. And I want you guys to kind of keep in the back of your mind, there's a number of times throughout this where we almost get the "we are Venom" phrase from either Peter or the symbiote, though it never quite comes together. And there's a reason for that we'll get around to in a little bit, but for now just keep it in mind. So following this, when they take the fight to the Arachnio alongside of MJ, aka Jackpot, and I'm not going to spend too much time on her involvement here, but it does play into the whole King in Black thing, so just bear with me. But during all this chaos, MJ's new boyfriend, Paul, he's like her guy in the chair, he's the dude that came up with the tech that's in her suit, and through the course of this, she's going back and forth with him while talking to Peter, and it makes for a conversation between Peter and the Venom symbiote, where the symbiote realizes that Peter still misses MJ. So just keep that in mind as we head forward. But to take care of this Arachnio, MJ rolls her different chances so she can have something to use against this thing, and it ends up working out well enough, with Paul kind of rigging things on his end to raise her chances of getting frequency-based powers every time. The only issue is her gauntlets have a limiter to keep her from dying, so to bypass that limiter and get more power to face the Arachnio, MJ gets some help from the Venom symbiote, which from here boosts both her power and her probability of hitting the jackpot for her next attack, which as it turns out is pure antimatter to handle the Arachnio and pull out the Hobgoblin, who got sucked in there somewhere. So after seeing this, Peter leaves MJ to it. Him and Venom make their way to Grand Garden Arena, but what Peter doesn't know right now is that this whole situation with the All Hunger, it's not over, and MJ's left to face it all by herself. But as we follow Peter, this takes us into Venom War Part 2, with Peter making his way to the garden. And when Peter gets here, you still have the events taking place at Alchemax HQ that we saw kicking off in Venom War Issue 1. But I'm gonna save this for our next discussion because we gotta stick with Peter on this one, because there's a lot of stuff happening at 2 different locations, and things are escalating in different ways at both. And we see how this unfolds in the garden rather quickly. And it's kind of like, man, what is it with Eddie Brock and gardens? But as soon as Peter gets here, Eddie wants him to hand over the Venom symbiote. And the symbiote wants to talk this over with Eddie, but Peter just lets it know like, hey, you're too close to this. Cause like we saw, the Venom symbiote has a lot of emotions invested towards both sides, both Eddie and Dylan. So Peter just tells the symbiote he'll do the talking. Cause like we talked about before, the main through line of Venom War, it comes down to who has the Venom symbiote when this is all said and done. This is why Eddie doesn't want Dylan to have it, because he believes Dylan bonding with the Venom symbiote is going to lead to Venom World, and Dylan's trying to keep Eddie from getting the symbiote because he's seen the future where this leads to Eddie going down a path that is very similar to Knull. So throughout Venom War, we've been walking this careful line where it's like, okay, as it would seem, no one individual can handle this. Man, it doesn't matter how good their intentions are. Down the line, eventually it just doesn't end well for everyone else. But right here, Peter, he doesn't hand over the Venom symbiote to Eddie because Eddie don't seem right now. So this ends up leading to Eddie bonding with Bedlam and attacking Peter right away. And keep in mind, at this point, like we saw before, Dylan's already made his way here, along with Toxin, Flexo, and Red Goblin. Normie Red Goblin, just to be clear. But during this fight between Eddie and Peter, Eddie merges with the different symbiote versions of himself, which now really just gets rid of all the multiple Eddies that we had before. As far as Tiro, Wild, Bedlam, they're all just one huge symbiote now. So off to the side, with Dylan figuring out what he's gonna do, it's here where he ends up bonding with both Flexo and Sleeper and becoming the Prince in Black. And it's nothing to scoff at, because I'd make the argument that Sleeper would have been enough, but with the addition of Flexo, this just takes it to another level. So now with Dylan suited up as the Prince in Black, he confronts his father Eddie Brock in his Mega Bedlam symbiote, which again is still him, though this version of Bedlam is much stronger than the one we've seen up to this point. So now when we have what's essentially the two main opposing sides standing face to face, when Bedlam goes to attack Dylan, Eddie jumps out and he tells Bedlam to stand down, because this isn't what Eddie wants. So for a moment here, just when it seems like things are about to calm down and father and son are about to talk this out, Dylan then hears the voice of Doom saying, "Flexo, this is the voice of Doom." But he goes on to say, "This is the voice of Doom commanding you to remember, Eddie Brock, the so-called King in Black. When the time is right, you will be my hand of vengeance against him, and his own son will be your weapon." Which from here, this just has Flexo taking over by controlling the Prince in Black and making Dylan blast Eddie. And Doom made sure to set this up where it would happen in a moment when Eddie was no longer reinforced by a symbiote, and it would knock Eddie's soul out of alignment with his physical form. So from there, Flexo could finish the job by damaging Eddie faster than he could heal. And really, this is just the moment that Doom was referring to. Back when we saw Doom and Eddie travel to the past, and Doom told Flexo that he would help Doom turn Dylan into a weapon. So Dylan tells Sleeper to do something, but Sleeper's not even able to stop this because Flexo's much older and much stronger. And I mean, on top of that, you also have Doom's involvement, where his influence is stronger than Flexo's control over himself. But it's crazy here because Flexo just handles Sleeper like it's nothing. So of course Peter gets involved, only to get his face slammed into the ground by Bedlam, who's now made his way back to the fight. And this causes things to get split up for a moment here, because now we got symbiote Spider-Man, Peter Parker, versus Bedlam Pro Max, while over to the side with Normie, the Red Goblin, he's now activated by Kang. And I gotta say, in Normie's case, this is even crazier than what we saw with Doom, because as it turns out, Kang, he built the Rascal symbiote. So this entire time that we've seen Normie with the Rascal symbiote, that whole plot line was orchestrated by Kang, with the symbiote being pulled from Bedlam and programmed with techniques that Kang learned from Meridius. So because of what we saw prior to this in Venom Volume 5, with Kang and Doom arguing about time travel, this was just the start of them realizing that they both were going for the throne. However, both Kang and Doom were doing this according to their individual belief in how time travel works, which like we saw is a very different perspective for both Doom and Kang. Because Kang, he's mastered the science of time, which in a way works against him because he sticks to the rules. Because with mastering the science of time, you're bound within its laws. While on the other hand, when it comes to Doom, he acknowledges the laws of time, but he doesn't consider himself to be trapped in it, because Doom has also adopted a greater degree of magical thinking, allowing him to move through time with more liberty and less consequence. And we saw an example of this when Eddie and Doom traveled back to World War II, where at the time Doom was killing soldiers left and right. And it had Eddie like, man, you're about to wreck the future, only for Doom to tell him that this changes nothing, because the present day, as they know it, it already includes everything that Doom has already done here. And it's kind of trippy, because there's also this whole element of the butterfly effect, because Doom also made it clear that he knows the difference between a dead butterfly and a live one, which really just means there are some things you can change in the past that'll do nothing to the present, nor will they create an alternate timeline. And there are other things, live butterflies, that will either retcon events heading into the future or branch out into an alternate timeline. But this just all goes back to why Doom's time platform has been and probably will always be the peak of time traveling technology in Marvel Comics, and it may very well be the reason why Kang hates him so much. But coming back to the topic at hand, it's here we find out that Kang had long since placed the Rascal symbiote in position to wait for Doom to make his move against Eddie Brock. So when that time came, which is now, Kang could use the Rascal symbiote, aka Red Goblin, aka Normie, to stop Doom and secure his own power in the future. And as a result, it's here where Dylan Brock gets yanked out of Flexo, or as the kids would say, he got yeeted. But following this, when we go back over to Peter, who is getting walked by Bedlam at the moment. While this is happening, there's a moment where Peter gets yanked out of the present. And it's crazy how this is done because he's put back within a fraction of a second. Because I mean, this is time travel. But the way this happens, it starts with the Venom symbiote telling Peter that he's got to let it go, which quickly forces Peter to have to make a choice. Because right now, both Dylan and Eddie need Venom. And it's a tough call for Peter to make because he's also concerned about the Venom symbiote too. And it just leads to the symbiote telling Peter, you think this is the last time you will see me, but even if it is, you have to let me go. And when the symbiote says that, this is where it happens. This is where another voice comes in saying, but you don't want that, do you? You know the truth deep in your bones. You love him. And it's right here where Peter's pulled out of the present moment. But in real time, he'll be back before you can bat an eye. It's crazy. But right here with Peter hearing this voice, he's like, wait, you're not Venom. So it responds saying, no, I am eventual. So then Peter's like, making less sense isn't helping anyone. Big scary voice. So it then says, yes, humor. I remember humor. And then for a moment they go back and forth with Peter's spider sense going off and this voice telling him, I thought it was a shield, but it was just a mask. So I didn't have to look at my true face. And right after that, it reveals itself to him, having this huge, monstrous spider form. And just going off of what this thing is saying about its spider sense being a mask and hiding its true form, as it would appear this is the eventuality had Peter Parker become the King in Black. And this is where we get into the craziness of not just the eventuality, but also how these entities who exist outside of time can continue to exist once they're created. Because as it stands right now, the eventuality is Eddie Brock and the Venom symbiote in their final form outside of time. And when the universe ends, this final form will be replaced by another who will take this role. In this final form, Eddie will move on to the next version of the cosmos and either emerge as a new Knull or just enjoy retirement. But in the here and now, Eddie Brock Venom, his final form, it sits in the current role of the eventuality. And when Eddie Brock first met this version of himself, his final form so to speak, it explained to him the responsibilities and the burdens of the eventuality, which in a nutshell just meant that every version of Venom would eventually make its way back to him, because his final form currently sits in the position of the eventuality. But this final form of Eddie Brock also told him that this was not the original plan, because Spider-Man was born for this role. But life happened, and he's not here. You are Eddie. You bought the ticket. Somebody has to take the ride. So just by going off what we were told, prior to this point, Peter Parker was supposed to be the King in Black, but when life happened, so to speak, and he stepped away from that role, his final form lost its position as the eventuality, because this final form, whether it's Peter's or Eddie's, it exists outside of time. So regardless what happens from the beginning of time to the end, once an eventuality is created, it'll always be out there, regardless of whatever choice Eddie or Peter make. And this is why you can have someone like Meridius, who's your far future version of Eddie Brock, who has existed throughout eons almost twice over. This is why his creation did not destroy Eddie's eventuality. So yeah, just going off what we're told here, I believe that's why it only tells Peter I am eventual, and it explains to him how its spider sense was just a mask, because with it showing up here, that in itself is proof that Peter became the King in Black at some point. So what it ends up doing is revealing to Peter the future where that plays out if Peter continues to hold on to the Venom symbiote, because it tells him, come little spider, hold fast to the power of Clintar, unlock yourself from the veil of time, behold the world to come. Rip away your human skin and see the King in Black beneath, because once again, this is a power that operates beyond time. So what we end up doing here is taking a look at how things are set to play out if current day Peter holds on to the Venom symbiote, because it's here where he goes on to say, from world to world, my web stretches through the void. I give form to infinity and sit at the center of the stars. I am the king of all that remains in this empty webbed universe, and I've come a long way from queens. The few who remain beyond my control now marshal against me. I can sense it. Every one of them wants a friend. Even now, they are so very brave. I wish it hadn't come to this. It's the kind of thing I've heard tyrants say across centuries, but now in this terrible moment, I mean it genuinely. I've been fighting for so long. Villains, heroes, armadas, empires, ever since that day in New York, my so-called victory, Mary Jane's mastery of the Arachneode, our rule as king and queen, until she was consumed, until our daughter chose the darkness of Groot space over filling her grief. They'll never understand why I protect them, what I lost all those years ago with a single choice. Instead, they rage against the dying of their chaotic galaxy. I have to remind myself in this moment, more than any other, this is my fault. And following this, we see all the remaining heroes of the distant future coming together for one last attack against Peter Parker, the King in Black. In this team, it's a mashup of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Silver Surfer, all being led by the Arachneode. And as they're heading in, they're well aware of Peter's spider sense letting him know that they're all coming. So their minds are made up to forget the man that Peter Parker was and hit him with everything they've got, because this is their one chance and their one and only shot to pull this off. So they head in and they give Peter everything they've got, and they all get wrecked. Because as a King in Black, sure, Peter's powerful, but because he's Spider-Man, equipped with his spider sense, stopping this guy is nigh impossible. And it's eventually going to come to the point where Peter realizes there's only one person who can stop him. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But to me, it's one of the reasons why I feel like this is one of the most important King in Black related stories that we've gotten so far. And we'll dive deeper into why I believe that's the case in just a moment. But as Peter is just wrecking each and every one of these guys, it's not even close. But as the heroes are being destroyed one by one, each of them are saying things like Gamora, she's saying this is for my sister. Star-Lord is like this is for Earth, so on and so forth. And it has Peter, the King in Black, saying yes, exactly. Their memory means everything to me. Their sacrifice will not be in vain. Because to Peter, in this future where he took control of everyone, he believed that was the solution. Because with this great level of power, they were all his responsibility. And though it came at the cost of him taking down many others who didn't fall in line, Peter sees this attack almost like his hands being forced to slaughter all these guys who he once called his friends. And the main person who he blames for this attack is the Arachneode. Because years ago, MJ was the host of the Arachneode. She managed to use it as a symbiote, but later on she died. And at this point, Peter blames the Arachneode for him losing MJ, for him no longer having his daughter May, and robbing them of their place in this future that he's molded. But this current host of the Arachneode, she tells him, future? What future? You never trusted anyone after you lost her, referring to MJ. You blamed yourself, you blamed us, you blamed your daughter. So Peter goes off, telling the Arachneode, don't you dare talk about my daughter. You're the reason I lost her. Only for Arachneode to tell him you didn't lose her. You just couldn't see. Because for Peter, he thought he saw the whole picture. He can see through the entirety of time. He can see through any symbiote, except for the Arachneode. Because like we learned just a moment ago through the origin of the Arachneode, it's a part of no hive. And that's why to future King in Black Peter, it was a blind spot. So eventually when he kills her here, he finds out that she was trying to tell him that it was his daughter in there. May became the Arachneode after MJ. And it was not that she was killed before, but instead she walked away because she wasn't on board with what Peter was doing as the King in Black. And it's a tragic outcome because in the future, Peter did all of this with the intention of thinking of his family first, only for it to eventually cost him everything. So from here, as modern day Peter gets pulled back to the present, he hears that voice calling, saying, come back to me. You are lost in time, but time is a liar. Listen to the voice of the now. It's as you told me. Nothing is eventual. Which right there just lets us know, at some point down the line, future Peter had a conversation with his final form, where it decided to go back and show present day Peter where all this was heading. So in the here and now, Peter could decide to do something different. And that's precisely what he does. Because instead of keeping the Venom symbiote like he wanted to, he ends up giving it to both Dylan and Eddie, while saying at the end of the day, they are Venom. And it's a crazy turn of events here. But now that we're back in the present and Peter's still dealing with Bedlam, it's here where Peter gets a call from Paul, MJ's current boyfriend, who's calling Peter to let him know that MJ has gone dark in her fight with the Arachnio, which now has Peter like, okay, I need to leave here and go after MJ. Because just a moment ago, he saw where that future led had he kept the symbiote, but now he has to go back and save MJ without it, because that's what heroes do. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.